Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 18 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with artificial intelligence and machine learning strategies and programs in the federal government. With me on today's show are Rachel Martin, NGA Maven Office Director, Dr. Matthew Miller, former Principal Data Scientist for U.S. Army and current Chief Data Scientist, U.S. Courts. Dr. Brian Hens, AI Senior Science Advisor, Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology. John Gassick, Senior Vice President and GM Public Sector, Veritone. Bill Washburn, Chief Program Officer, U.S. Federal Progress, MarkLogic. And Ben Cushing, Chief Architect, Health and Life Sciences, Red Hat. Well, we're talking about AI and machine learning. There's a tectonic shift in this technology enabling all kinds of capability. The White House is coming in hot with a lot of policy program and direction, which I think is a good thing. Rachel, I know that we used to call it Project Maven. Now we call it Program Maven. And I know that NGA has taken on a sort of a larger responsibility there, perhaps, along with partnering with the CDAO office. Perhaps you can describe that a little bit and then give us a state of the state as to what is happening at NGA in regards to this technology.
Sure, and good afternoon. Thanks for having me. One of our main goals when we transitioned the then Project Maven from the OUS DINS office was to take what had been a really fantastic Pathfinder and give it some stability and long-term planning so that the warfighter would have confidence that these capabilities would be enduring for them across the FIDIP. So what we are working on here at the agency is moving this through the relatively new software acquisition pathway within DoD. We're committed to maintaining the agility, flexibility, and speed that the project was known for under INS. And so using this approach, we're confident that we'll be able to maintain those same characteristics and also start having a good sense of what we will look like in a few years as well. As far as the agency and where we're going with AI broadly, obviously Maven is just one CV program, one computer vision program at NGA, and so one of the things we're working on, of course, is how do we all sort of come together to have a more strategic approach to computer vision, and that's manifested in a few different ways. First, probably most important for the GEOINT community has been the stand-up of a GEOCOM subcommittee on data and AI. The Data and AI Subcommittee, GDAIS, is the acronyms they're using, and this was stood up just this past spring by the director in his role as functional manager. The idea is, this will be a forum where we can start taking some of the standards and approaches that may have been best practice at NGA or within Maven and promulgate them more broadly to the greater GEOINT community. I think the other thing worth mentioning is, just as the public has become more aware of AI and some of the power behind the technology, we have also, at the agency, had the same realizations and have worked really hard to be ahead of, be ahead in terms of things like responsible AI. So the other initiative that the director announced most recently at the Aspen Institute was the establishment of a certificate for AI standards. Basically, we're calling it GEOINT Responsible AI Training. And essentially what this will do is anyone who has a role in developing AI within the agency or within the GEOINT community will have a set of sort of standards and expectations that they'll have to meet in order to be certified to be involved in that technology. And so it's focused on making sure everybody understands what the risks are across the entire development lifecycle for AI. And that was it was a really big focus of the director. He's a huge advocate, of course, for Maven. You heard him talk about it at a lot of different events, but he's also equally as strong an advocate for responsible AI and American way of warfare. So these are some of the broader strategic initiatives where we've gone as an agency in the past year.
Such a powerful tool and such an incredible amount of data that you all have and processing using these tools. Very thankful that they're taking that healthy balance, if you will. Matt, how about over at, well, we're going to talk about U.S. Army. Incredible amount of work that you had done over there at the U.S. Army. Give us the state of the state as to sort of where you left that as you departed and now on your way over to U.S. courts.
I mean, the Office of Enterprise Management, or formerly Office of Business Transformation, has taken a number of initiatives to kind of drive artificial intelligence adoption and use across the enterprise level of the U.S. Army. Some of the initiatives, of course, that we worked on, smaller projects like preventative. Well, I shouldn't say smaller projects because it was quite a large one.
Nothing small in the U.S. Army, right?
That's true, but one of them would be, for me, a smaller project, would be like a preventative maintenance where we would look at a vehicle, make a time series model to actually provide maintenance across when it would actually, that particular vehicle would break down, and allow a mechanic on the ground to basically make repairs to keep that vehicle up and running. One of the biggest initiatives that Mr. Bakari Dale, the senior leader over at Office of OEM, is actually heading is the Deep Green Initiative, AI Data Science Challenge. The Deep Green is a very powerful tool for the U.S. Army in the sense that not only does it do a challenge, so basically someone in the U.S. Army comes in with a very difficult challenge that they're using data science, machine learning, AI, even deep learning, that they can't necessarily solve it. Either they don't have the technical expertise, they don't have the manpower, or they just don't understand how to actually solve that problem because it goes beyond their capability. The OEM comes in with Deep Green, allows them to not only get a production-ready model ready for deployment, it also allows for a state-of-the-art solution, which either matches or beats industry and academia as well. We've run 3 of those now in the past. One was for preventive maintenance, one was for unliquidated obligations, and the current one this year was for computer vision, where it was looking at building out a visual system for understanding the environment for autonomous vehicle robots. These types of challenges weren't really possible with the incoming department's capabilities. So Deep Green was allowed to answer that issue and produce something that they can actually use in production, as well as being able to expand that model's parameters and be applied to multiple different other problems as well. Another benefit of the Deep Green initiative is that we're also, not only producing a production-ready model, but we're training people in the U.S. Army, bringing in people from academia, bringing in people from other departments like the Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, training them on AI, these best practices, best state-of-the-art models, how to actually code, how to use some of these third-party products that are geared towards making a no-code solution for AI, to allow AI, learning artificial intelligence, kind of spread across not only just the Army, but across the federal government, people who want to participate into it, and also allow academia to come in and we can then share thoughts and processes between each other, allowing for a more cohesive unit, better practices to be formed, and allow the Army to maintain at a higher standard compared to other industries and federal governments as well.
Fascinating to allow the field folks, the soldiers, et cetera, to use this technology, get it into their hands, and make great use of it. Looking forward to hearing about some of the other activities as well. Brian, how about over at Homeland Security? I was delighted to see the CIO and the Science and Technology Organization join forces, put together an early on task force, et cetera. Tell us about what's happening over there, your role, very delicate situation there with so many constituents that you're dealing with, trying to use this technology properly, safely.
So one of the major initiatives that we're focused on that you mentioned is the Department of Homeland Security has stood up its first ever AI task force, which Secretary Mayorkas established in April of this year of 2023. with the goal of advancing the use of artificial intelligence to support critical homeland security missions. And as you mentioned, the AI task force is co-led by the Undersecretary for Science and Technology, Dr. Dmitry Kuznetsov, and the DHS Chief Information Officer, Mr. Eric Hyson. So in applying AI to these critical homeland security missions, there were 4 priority initiatives that were identified in the memo that stood up the AI task force. The first one is enhancing the integrity of supply chains and the broader trade environment. The second is to leverage AI to counter the flow of fentanyl into the United States through better detection methods and the disruption of criminal networks. Applying AI to digital forensic tools to help identify, locate, and rescue victims of online child sexual exploitation and abuse, and to identify and apprehend the perpetrators. And finally, to work with our partners in government, industry, and academia to assess the impact of AI for our ability to secure critical infrastructure. So this AI task force was stood up in April, as I mentioned, and continues to provide updates and work very diligently to identify the areas where AI can be applied to these mission areas. Part of what the AI task force has started to do is, as we adopt AI within the mission, in September last month, DHS published 2 new policies that established the key principles for responsible use of AI, and to specify how DHS will ensure the use of facial recognition and facial capture technologies and subject to extensive testing and oversight. So these were developed by the AI task force. We're one of only a handful of government agencies that have taken this step, and the first to offer a comprehensive set of guidelines specifically on ethics. So it's Directive 2611, the use of facial recognition and face capture technologies, and it dictates a number of things. First one is that face recognition and face capture technologies will be thoroughly tested to ensure that no unintended biases or disparate impact in accordance to national standards. So that's extremely important for the department. Also, we'll review all existing face recognition and face capture technologies to conduct periodic reviews and testing to ensure that national standards are continued to be met. And will allow U.S. citizens to afford the right to opt out of face recognition for specific non-law enforcement uses. So it prohibits the facial recognition from being used as the sole basis for any law or civil enforcement related actions. And another area that the AI task force is looking at is how to create a better trained workforce at all levels, from the users to the managers, all the way up to senior leadership.
Such an incredible technology, and the respectful use of it is so important. I think I heard the secretary say one time that Homeland Security, if it's not the largest, one of the largest agencies as far as interacting with the public at large. So really appreciate you all taking a leadership role on that. John, at Veritone, you all are right smack into this technology and enabling and unlocking these capabilities for the agencies. Give us a state of the state as to what is happening across that landscape.
That's a great question. I think one of the things that's changed, you mentioned it in the introductions to all of us, is the large language models that became available to everyone and very simple to use, created an interface between an AI model and lots of humans. And one of the things that we've seen over, we've been around about 9 years now, and what we have seen is an increase in adoption once the human or the user understands the model, what it's trying to do, understands the solution and what it's trying to do. And I think the large language models made that broad-based. Young kids could go in and write a school paper, parents could go in and do something. It's really that interface that I think has changed and added a lot of momentum. Underneath, I think there's a lot of going on in terms of creating of new models, taking models and putting them together. For us, and the thing that we've seen and where we've started to get traction with our solutions is really making them applicable to a specific problem, creating leverage for humans, creating leverage for dollars spent. And that's where we've seen the most uptick.
Fantastic. And we really do appreciate that. Bill, Progress Mark Logic. Explain that to us, if you will. We all understand Mark Logic and what Mark Logic is and how that works and the technology associated to that. Tell us about this combo platter, if you will, and then what you all are doing as far as enabling this capability across our landscape?
Thank you for the question, Luke. So in February of this year, Progress Software Corporation bought MarkLogic, and that acquisition has really empowered MarkLogic to be a more active participant, a now public company. We have our a wholly owned subsidiary that is FOCI compliant, of course. But the power behind being a larger corporation really drives a lot of what is the next step for MarkLogic. MarkLogic's been 20 years in the making. I think we were AI enabled before anybody else, frankly, indexing on entry of data and multi-model rather than slow modeled. One of the bigger integrations that we've done over the last 2 years is to bring in our semaphore fact-based capability that really does drive reference models and enable large language models to be quick, to be responsive, to be fact-based, enhancing those models with the capabilities, that from my perspective, that are much more needed. When you look at what Semaphore provides, we're providing the semantic knowledge, the knowledge that's pulling out those facts quicker, more relevant information for the knowledge models. And then the other things that we're doing is we continue to accelerate programs like with McBoss, our TDM catalyst for the Marine Corps. That was a data modernization program where we took down the silos of data like we have been for 20 years in the government. But instead of just modernizing that into a data platform, we modernized that into the cloud. And moving data to the cloud is one of the key elements of gaining access, gaining speed, gaining agility for things like large language models, for things like semantic indexing, that really supports your AI ML needs. And then I would think the other thing that I would throw in is we were awarded the Joint AI Center's Data Readiness for AI Development Program. That's a large IDIQ where with responsible AI, we signed the ethics and data initiative that DoD put forward in that. And I believe we were the only data provider to sign that as a commercial company. So we will commit to those kind of things within MarkLogic and within the greater Progress MarkLogic.
Well, we appreciate the partnership and we look forward to great things to come in the future. It sounds like you're doing a lot already. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. We were just going over state of the state. Ben, I'm going to throw it over to you at Red Hat. I think about Red Hat and I say, wait a minute, these are the folks that gave us all this great technology to get us into the cloud, make sure things run smooth, containers, et cetera. Tell us about what you're doing, which is way more than the Red Hat we knew from years ago.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'd say the first thing that we all should probably identify is that a lot of the AI development is happening in the open source communities around the world. So, Red Hat's one of the largest open source companies in the world. And so we're as involved as you might imagine in the development of models, platform, and additional capabilities for monitoring and scaling and all the things you need to make any type of software work, whether it's AI or not. My personal favorite story in this is what's going on within the VA. They created an AI incubator called Arches, which is specifically designed to allow for extramural research to happen against synthetic patient data. And we're a deep part of the technology that enables that. And then just this past year, Mission Daybreak was an effort within the VA, a $20 million effort to reduce veteran suicide. And Red Hat and our partners was one of the winners of that competition. And in that state, we built actual AI models that produced a risk score for a patient for suicide ideation, and then serving that risk score directly into an electronic health record so that a clinician could consume that. And that's really point inference work. In addition to that, we also did population health analytics. So we're able to look at the distribution of veterans across the country, compare them against the programs that are in place for depression and suicide and other behavioral health issues, and then produce an additional score for those programs so that the VA can make informed decisions on investment and divestment in any one of the programs based on the geography of the veteran population. With all that, I think it's all dependent right now on cloud services. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's actually sort of the future of AI is less about cloud, and it's actually more about distributed computing. So what we're starting to see is models getting served to as close to the data as possible. And the vast majority of the data that we're all seeing getting collected is being done by sensors that are at the edge. Mm-hmm. And by moving these models closer to it, we're reducing latency in inference work and also creating faster decisions for action from any one of the actors that need to have those quick decision-making activities. So, a good example would be DoD. You have a patient who's in theater who is injured. You need the inference work to happen right there in theater. You don't need cloud service to respond because you're probably a disconnected environment anyways. And so what we're starting to see is a lot of the training and upfront development happening in the cloud, but then a lot of the deployment actually happening at the edge. It's a really exciting activity.
Absolutely. At the edge, real time, speed of mission, if you will, super important to get that technology right down there on the ground, so to speak. Matt, you talked about a lot of things at U.S. Army sort of top line. Can you give us a specific example that you'd like to highlight regarding a program over there or a project?
I think one of the most successful projects, which I think when I originally proposed it, would be the current Deep Green Challenge, looking into computer vision for autonomous vehicle navigation. It was a very high risk project in the sense that if anyone works in computer science, especially in computer vision, those projects can kind of go one way or the other way. You can have a really great success, or sometimes it could be pretty much a large failure, especially if you don't have a lot of background in computer vision. The Deep Green competition brings in people who are not experts in computer vision. They're not experts in programming. Most of them came in with zero experience in Python, computer vision, and the methodology needed to actually build out a successful product. Throughout the last year the Deep Green has been running, we have not only beaten what the Army Research Laboratory has made as the baseline model. The competitors came in, completely smashed that by easily over 10 times the accuracy compared to what ARL was produced. But we also not only shown that a no-code tool was also able to come in. We use the H2O AI as a no-code tool to lower the bar for competitors who have zero experience in programming, zero experience in AI, and zero experience specifically in computer vision. And they were actually able to successfully complete and even rank in the top 3 competitors using this tool. So not only have we successfully built a production-ready model for the Army Research Laboratory using LiDAR and computer vision data, but also trained people who have no experience in computer vision how to understand the models, how to build out the data sets, build out the pipelines, train these models, and then understand how to evaluate them to know that they are decent models, and that it can be used in their own work as well. So basically, we gave them the knowledge they needed to work in their own department.
I mean, it's really fascinating to hear these use cases and just thousands of these that are available. John, how about a Veritone? I know you all, as you said, have been around a long time in this space specifically. Can you give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think let's start with a problem. And I agree with Ben and Bill both in terms of, the cloud being the big factory of where these models are and crunching, and then the importance of getting the data out to the edge, or getting the AI out to the edge where the data is. In terms of a program, one that we've had a lot of success with, we started with state and local agencies, police agencies, which now moved into FedCiv and into FedDOD, is automating the process of redacting audio and video for FOIA requests. Sounds fairly simple, but it's a very, very large problem with all the body cams and CCTV footage and all the data that's available that people request. And then some human has to go through and painstakingly watch it, listen to it, and get rid of any of the PII or objectionable material. We started on this actually with an SI firm who had a problem. We built an application on top of our stack, and it has now become something that we can sell and people can use very easily. What it's done is it's law enforcement in particular, given leverage back to the officers. Instead of spending time going through video hour after hour, we let the AI models go through and do that, and then the humans supervise and observe it. We call it humans on the loop versus in the loop, trying to give them leverage and save time and money. That's been a great program. It's really accelerated over the last year or so, this application, because of FOIA rules across the states, but also the implementation of body cameras and grabbing more video content. I'll tell you a real quick story where, if you put 1,000 officers, or even let's use 200 officers are all wearing body cams, they roll to a scene, there could be 8 to 10 video streams that have to be gone through and redacted. And it takes roughly 10 hours of human time to redact an hour of video. So when you use AI, it can be as short as 1-to-1, 3-to-1 for something difficult.
It's just fascinating to hear those statistics in regards to thinking about the volumes of video data and applying AI and just sort of distilling it down to a specific nugget, if you will.
Yeah, that's kind of the ROI, and the folks that have dealt with it, understand the problem. The other thing that I would say, and this is under this program, we get traction on these things. The government agencies, police officers, that's not their business. Their business is to protect and serve. And some of this overhead that we've put in with FOIA requests and then giving them technologies that people want to see. I mean, I'm talking about a very, very post-event problem, right? The crime has happened. It's probably gone to court. There's a law now to request it. This is way down the system of value, but it takes a lot of human time. And I think the message for us that we're trying to get across is, let's use AI for good, but let's also make humans more efficient, put humans on the loop, and use the technology in a way that saves a lot of time and money.
Amen. Rachel, I'm going to swing it up to you. I can't imagine the amount of data that you all are pulling and applying AI and then bringing those products to the warfighter. Different kind of use case than we just heard, but I'm sure fascinating ones. Can you give us an example of one that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. And I'd say actually they're not terribly distinct. Several of the other panelists referenced this challenge going from the relative abundance of cloud resources to, perhaps some sort of disconnected environment where you don't have you don't necessarily have all that available to you. So one of our more recent partnerships, experimentations that we did was with the Navy. We actually had one of our team members travel aboard the Carl Vinson in its most recent composite trading unit Computex exercise. And a couple of challenges when you're operating afloat. It is, of course, the definition of disconnected. Certainly, there are times when the vessel is able to connect to cloud resources, but usually you're operating on a soda straw. So moving anything like Juent, which is very large, becomes a challenge in and of itself. So what we were looking at was how do we deliver our data, our detections, our AI output in a way that is usable by the fleet, right? And that is a size issue from a data perspective, but it's also as we sort of look to how this data might be used in more in competition space, right? In competition against an adversary, we need to also be able to sometimes deliver that data without alerting anybody that we're doing that, right? So in this sort of denied environment, how do we deliver the outputs of our AI geospatial models in a way that the vessel is able to use them to enhance their battle space awareness? So we have one of our data scientists out working with a Navy program, Data Science at Sea. It was a really fantastic experiment. I'm not going to go into too many details about how they did what they did, but we had a really fantastic time getting hands-on with the users themselves in figuring out how do we deliver detections without anyone necessarily realizing that we're doing that, but two, and I think also probably most important, how do we integrate those detections with the native data, with the local sensors that vessel may have on board as they operate? And so this is an enduring partnership. It's certainly not over yet, but the primary focus is looking at some dark targets. How do we fuse local data with this AI detections from overhead in a way that is useful? I think this is a really good example too of our sort of ethos and philosophy about meeting users where they're at. I think it's really important from an AI development perspective that you really kind of be on the ground to understand how you can best integrate that AI with the actual workflows of the users. It's not just, I want to dump 2 million detections on them. That's not helpful, but how to deliver the ones that are most useful in a manner that's helpful and in a timeliness that is going to meet mission.
Timeliness, usefulness, and hey, you're on a ship. We're going to get it to the ship, even if it's a soda straw that we have to use. So fascinating use case there. Bill, how about at Progress Mark Logic? Give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight.
So I think the program that I'd most like to highlight is something that takes us back to when we first started thinking about AI in terms of activity-based intelligence and object-based production. So ABI, OBP, I think, was one of the foundation elements that really was driving knowledge models and knowledge within the fact-based elements of data and how to bring that forward to determine anticipation, right? So anticipatory intelligence, this was a program for an intelligence community customer that we know and love, but won't identify. It was called Structured Observation Management. And really what we did is we took the observation of something like a tank and then applied the knowledge of that tank. So let's say that a tank fully armed, fully equipped, fully fueled runs 7 to 9 inches off the tracks. That observation would tell you that that tank is en route to engage. But if it was running 12 to 14 inches off the tracks, then that observation may tell you that it's en route for refueling and rearmament. So when you're looking at the things that you can anticipate and apply that knowledge, and then your data can just give you that feedback instantaneously, you know that that information is being applied for that anticipation. The anticipation is this tank en route to engage, or is this tank in retreat to rearm and refuel? There's very important fact-based elements for the engagement of a war.
Interesting nuance there, and I love the use of that technology to sort of suss out that type of capability for the warfighter. Brian, I'm going to go over to you at Homeland Security. You all are you're really dealing with some gnarly stuff over there, as you described. Can you give us a specific example of one of those elements you'd like to highlight?
Sure. So at DHS, we have a very diverse mission set. And so we've seen some value add from adding AI, particularly in biometric technologies to improve their performance in the real world. Think about the airport security checkpoints, infrastructure resilience, and data response. But a specific example I'd like to talk about is AI that's used by our Customs and Border Patrol agents. So every day, 40,000 vehicles enter our country through the San Ysidro port of entry at San Diego, California. And so traditionally, when a car drives north from Mexico, it's approached by an officer and they would inspect it and then decide whether they need a second inspection. And so a car recently drove by on that path and entered the port of entry, and the officer had no reason to really go to a greater inspection than a normal stop. But at the same time, we have new machine learning models that have been deployed that are able to process huge amounts of data, and it identified a potentially suspicious pattern in the vehicle's crossing history. It alerted the officer considered the alert and decided to refer the car for a secondary inspection. And it was during the secondary inspection that discovered in the vehicle's rear quarter panels and gas tank were over 165 pounds of narcotics. At which point, CBP officers were able to seize the drugs, the vehicle, and arrest the driver and passenger. So this is where we see the real value of AI within the DHS mission, is to help the officers improve their ability to identify these types of issues where speed and accuracy are very important. And we're going to continue to employ AI for these types of missions.
I love the use case, and I love the use case, right down there on the ground to the operator, enabling them to make a decision real time. That's fascinating and fantastic to hear that. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. We were talking about use cases. Ben, I know you have a whole treasure trove of use cases. Give us one that you'd like to highlight that Red Hat was in the middle of.
Yeah, I just want to take it back real quick to what Brian said about the local decision making, and the word that was kind of floating there was augmentation, right? You're augmenting people's decision making. And I think most of the use cases that I've observed in the healthcare space is about augmentation of decision making. And the place, just to come back to the OpenAI conversation, the place where the VA is really pushing hard is in using large language models to augment the documentation that goes on around healthcare. So think, clinical notes. Whenever you see your doctor, they spend an equal amount of time writing a clinical note as they spent with you. And the idea here is that an LLM can actually write a lot of that clinical note, and the doctor can actually go in and edit it down for precision. The VA is going into a tech sprint specifically to take advantage of the commercial sector's ability to achieve that kind of outcome. And that's coming up in the next few months. And then the second one is discharge notes. So when you leave the doctor's office, you get a bunch of paper that tells you what you should be doing when you get home. But each one of us is very different, right? We may have a different primary language. We might have a poor education. And those kind of things affect our ability to disseminate and make sense of the discharge note itself. So the idea is to use a large language model to actually write the discharge note in the right context for the patient, so they can actually consume it. And this is a real great example of augmentation of the administrative and clinical staff at any hospital in the country in order to provide better quality of care for the patient.
Fascinating, and a fascinating use case. And I like the sort of human on the loop, in the loop and the augmentation, all three make a lot of sense. Rachel, we're going to talk about priorities. I know it's always tough to get your number one priority, but what's the top of the job jar for you this year?
Well, I can only pick one. I think probably the most pressing this year issue that at least from a Maven perspective at NGA that we plan to focus on as a priority will be the continued participation and integration of Maven capabilities into the broader DoD JADC2 work that's ongoing. There's a number of exercises that are going on, whether it's the guide series that CDAO is leading, whether it's things like Scarlet Dragon and the 18th Airborne Corps. These are, for us, core areas to continue to evolve our AI capabilities, but more importantly, understand how we, from a GON perspective, better integrate into the larger DoD efforts to kind of figure out what this JADC2 thing is. And of course, right, the particular focus there is on the Indo-PACOM AOR. And so from a programmatic perspective, we're also continuing to evolve and mature our AI models to be able to work in those kinds of maritime AORs. So I know there's a lot of kind of buzzwords out there about JADC2. There's a lot of different people working on JADC2. I think it's really important for the department and for us as a combat support agency to really work to achieve some of those goals. And from our perspective as an AI program, of course, we're most interested in partnering with CDAO as they try to figure out what does that data layer look like for the broader JADC2 work.
We really do appreciate it, Rachel. Matt, how about top priority for you all this year?
I think the top priority for me would be basically like AI accessibility and understandability, like getting tools, capabilities, and items into the hands of like individuals inside departments, having them be able to build their own models, having them be able to implement these solutions at their level is more important than trying to buy a third-party tool or buying a pre-built packaged AI solution, because then having them being able to build out those models, understand them, and be able to explain them to senior leadership, other people, that's far more important than just slapping a Band-Aid on it and saying, okay, it works. Understandability is also another huge issue with AI. People are unwilling to trust the outputs of it unless they fully understand it. So building in the accessibility and understandability across the board is far more important for an AI development than some other priorities that are currently working.
Such a powerful tool, and we really do appreciate the focus on the proper use, how to use it, and making it a broad use for a lot of different entities to get their hands on that capability. Brian, how about at Homeland Security? I know there's a lot of activity going on over there. The Secretary's giving you all a tall order of things to focus on. Top priority for you all this year?
Yes, well, really, we're focused on setting the foundation for success in applying AI across the mission sets. There's the technical aspect of that with the data management, data annotation, testing event environments. But one of the main things that we're focused on is establishing clear policies and regulations that provide a stable and predictive environment for our industry partners. By establishing clarity on rules and expectations, we hope to encourage a long-term investment. And also by establishing these policies and governments and best practices, we want to ensure the security, privacy, and responsible use of AI within the department. That's going to be a big focus of the AI task force going forward. As I mentioned, the two policies that we already set for facial recognition and facial capture.
Very important policies that need to be set, and we really do appreciate you all taking the lead on that. Well, we could talk all day about use cases and priorities, but we're going to focus now on the future. Ben, we're going to start with you at Red Hat. Fast forward 2 to 3 years. We know you all have a lot of stuff in the Petri dish, got a lot of demand signals. You're leading the pack here in a lot of aspects. What do you think it's going to look like 2 to 3 years from now?
Two things I'd highlight. The first is taking what's going on with ChatGPT and OpenAI and bringing it to the edge. One of the challenges of OpenAI is it's a large public model with public data. We want to be able to take that same approach and apply it to private data sets train models against those private data sets and produce the same sort of output as ChatGPT. And there's a lot of technology enablement going on right now to do just that. Secondly, we're going to see a explosion in the federated learning space. So one of the major problems that everyone here probably has experienced is data sovereignty, right? People have their silos of data. And they don't want to make those silos of data available to anyone. The best example I can give is on the International Space Station. They have shared hardware between different nation states, and they want to use the same hardware so they can save money and space and resources and so on. And in order to do that, we need to be able to isolate the actual inference work that's going on and isolate the data. So federated learning, the idea is we bring our model to where the data is, and then train it there, and then bring the model back as a weighted average, and then produce a new model. And in this way, you can actually consider lots of different data sinks that are distributed across the world. I think the area where this is going to have the biggest impact, honestly, is in climate change, because so many of the nation states have tremendous sets of data that they can't and won't share with other nation states. And so if we can move those models specifically to where the data is and train it, we'll actually start to produce models that understand the general climate itself and solve for it.
Well, we really look forward to seeing that, and we really do appreciate everything that you all are doing. Bill, 2 to 3 years from now, Progress and MarkLogic fully fused together. What can we expect to see 2 to 3 years from now from where you all sit?
So very exciting times. Progress Software has a plethora of great development tools, great edge tools, user-focused for the developer. And, we are going to be working very quickly and very diligently on that integration of those great user end tools to provide visualization, to enhance DDIL, data to the edge, to enhance our capabilities with semantic indexing and semantic search. We will be working on visualization so that we can bring our data, the class of its own level of data, to our users for the first time. But really the next 2 to 5 years really brings the 3 S's: scale, scale, scale. And nothing more can be said than to emphasize that these models are only going to grow. This data is only going to get bigger. The success that we had from the Gulf War with UAVs being able to take high definition video and apply that high definition video to data with greater airframes, with greater camera visibility, that data quickly outgrew the capability of the humans that were reviewing it and the ability to store it. You could not keep up with the amount of data that was coming in from those UAVs. And that was in 2002, 2003. It's only exponentially increased. So when you look at data and you look at things like large models, and when you look at the complexities of all this, it's only going to scale. So that is what we're focused on, being able to apply our capabilities against large language models, against the scale of data coming, and with the excitement of having a much larger company than just a data company.
Looking forward to that. Scale, scale, scale. Veritone, you've been at this for quite some time. John, tell us what you anticipate 2 to 3 years from now as you've been on this journey from day one.
Well, I think for us, we started in the media and entertainment space. Our customers there are, all the name brand customers that you see and watch every day. If you watch ESPN tonight, you'll see they'll give affirmation to Veritone at the end of Sports Center. Mm-hmm. That's where we started. Those groups have been facing the data, video, audio problem for a long time. This group is talking about that now. How do we manage, UAV video? How do we take all this edge data and make sense of it? And so for us, we're really focused on solving these video and audio large scale problems and creating value for the humans at the edge and as the users. And to get really specific about that, I think the concepts here are all similar: taking models, applying them, taking data, fusing it together, making it accessible, making it available real time, creating value. That's how we have been engaged with it on the media and entertainment side for a long time. And so my team on the public sector side of Veritone, we're taking those technologies and those learnings and bringing them to the public sector. And so we see an intersection of data, compute, models, and putting together a solution that makes humans more effective, make decisions faster, and create value in a way where humans are still in charge. Our ethical thing is humans on the loop, not this isn't Minority Report where the AI is deciding who's guilty. This is really creating leverage. And when you think about that in that way, it frees you up to try some new things. I think LLMs have proven that, and that's why we have so much momentum in the public right now. We're really excited about being part of this in the future.
And so are we, and we really appreciate all the good work that you all are doing. Brian, 2 to 3 years from now, when I go through an airport, am I going to have a robot standing there sort of scanning my face and I'll just walk through touchless? What can we expect 2 to 3 years from now?
Thank you. So yeah, this is really where science and technology likes to think about, because it's out in the future. And it's not only about improving the way that we do things now, but what are the new ways that we can do things? So, with our customer facing or public facing missions, we want to increase customer service by supporting more languages, increase speed of response. Think about FEMA, immigration, Customs and Border Patrol, and continue to improve the responsible and trustworthy AI through moving forward with explainable AI, better quantification of risk, looking at adversarial AI and how it will affect our systems in the future, both AI-enabled and systems that are attacked by AI-enhanced methods. We want to certainly improve the data and information sharing across the department. So as Ben mentioned, looking at federated learning and methods of doing that, it's very difficult when to share that data, but if you can extract the information that you need, are there ways of doing that to help us improve our mission? And, just continue with the Customer Border Patrol example that I gave, other areas where we want to both increase the performance and the accuracy of the officers and the people on the ground.
And we really do appreciate all the work that you all are doing to keep us all safe, quite frankly. So hats off to all the men and women there. Matt, how about fast forwarding 2 to 3 years? What can we expect to see in regards to these various domains and areas that you're focusing your attention on?
I see 2 to 3 years, AI is just going to be far more accessible to just everybody. There's going to be more tools, more training. Pretty much everyone will be able to not only get their hands in AI, apply it to their daily lives, but also understand it and make more models. The second one where I think most of the innovation is going to come from is from quantum computing, because as data becomes more complex, systems become more complex, the models are going to become more complex. Your typical computer's architecture is not going to be able to support those. So shifting to more of a quantum-based computer architecture may be able to solve those more complicated problems that typical classical computer architectures can't solve.
And we really do appreciate all the extended efforts there. Rachel, you're going to take us home here 2 to 3 years from now. I know that the program that you're running over there will be sort of fully indoctrinated into the rest of the ecosystem. Lots of capability that you'll be bringing out there to the various customers. What can we expect 2 to 3 years from now that you can reveal to us here in public?
Sure. So to set the stage a little bit, I'll jump off of some of what Bill mentioned in terms of the volume of ISR data that we've already started to struggle with. Let's magnify that tenfold, if not 100-fold, and add in the growing fleets of autonomous vehicles that all the services are investing in. So you now have an amplification of sensor data that someone or something needs to be able to process. On top of that, let's add in the explosion in commercial GEOINT, not just currently, but projected into the future. Both the expected global coverage, revisit rates, and sensor diversity is going to be absolutely an order of magnitude larger than it is now. On top of that, we'll still have our national technical means and those different sources that we'll also need to integrate. So we'll be faced with a data-rich environment where we will have a need to rapidly correlate diverse AI outputs into one object or one geospatial detection, right? Are all of these things the same tank, or are they 4 different tanks that were detected from different sensors, for example?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of those big focus areas, or one of those things you can look for in the future is how do we reconcile diverse geospatial data sets and do it quickly, because speed is going to be a factor. I think the other area to look at in the future is the evolution of large language models into large vision models, and the growth of vision transformers as a technology that can both accelerate our ability to process image information, but also to generate new image information in terms of synthetic data. I'm excited to see some of the newer offerings come out in terms of large vision transformers. Most of those have been trained off of open source, images of photographs and text. And so I am very interested to see in the future how we take the historic holdings of an agency like NGA that has plenitude of written data associated with images to start using those kinds of techniques on that data. But conversely, how can we do that and do so in a fiscally responsible manner? You look at industry investments and what they spend to build something like one of the large language models like ChatGPT. How do we as the government invest in something like that and sustain it? Because it is quite a price tag, both in terms of the initial training and then the continuous retraining that's required. So that is a challenge. And then on top of that, of course, figuring out and understanding how we can use those without endangering people's lives, because we're a national security mission area and we can't afford to have our AI models hallucinate or create things that are inaccurate. So those are some of the challenges and areas that we'll be focusing on and looking at as we move into the future.
Rachel, we really appreciate everything that you're doing and all the men and women are doing over there to keep this country safe. I'd like to thank all the guests for taking their time out of their busy schedules to join us for this program. I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.